So I think you guys follow this channel for a long time, right? You know I like to do these off the cuff discussions, and I like to do these news updates on games whenever they sort of reveal information. It's the most convenient way for me to do, like, maybe off the cuff. So that's what I'm going to do for this particular segment. I'm going to talk about some news that dropped from the magazine, a UK magazine somewhere, about Resident Evil 3 Remake, and they're doing possible cuts, potential cuts to some of the content in the game that was featured in the original. It's not going to be in the remake anymore. Just a disclaimer here. There is some things that is solidified in terms of what they're doing and altering, like the multiple endings thing. That's definitely not going to possibly happen in this remake. They're going to have a more clear-cut story. I'm focusing on the direct quotes from the director or the producer themselves, because it seems like it's up in the air about Mercenaries being cut. That was from the original author's point of view. It wasn't directly quoted from the producer being interviewed at the time. So I want people to be aware of this, because I found that weird. And I also found the prospect of this guy getting Murphy Seeker and Mikhail wrong in terms of roles, like, really weird. Like, Murphy Seeker was never in the train when it came to that event. So I don't know why this guy wrote that in there, that Murphy Seeker was the one on the train and not Mikhail. It's kind of weird, but you know, I just had to sort of resolve that for a second. This is a couple of bullet points about what's going to be in the game, and at the end, as a bonus, I'm also going to talk about the Julia Voth controversy and what I think about it. First and foremost, let's get right into it. So they said you shouldn't expect an exploration of Raccoon City like an open world game, but there will definitely be plenty of exploration in many areas of the city. So what that is telling me is it's not going to be open world. That is pretty much obvious A tier, number one, no brainer. I didn't think this game really needed to be open world. I mean, Raccoon City, while, you know, Resident Evil 3 is the game where Raccoon City takes place on the streets. You're more on the streets. You're not really in interiors and everything, unless you're talking about like Dead Factory, or you're in RPD for like 5 minutes, maybe even less than 5 minutes. You get in and you get out. You're mostly on the streets in Resident Evil 3. And I guess the main thing they wanted to squash is saying, hey, this is not open world, but there is a lot of places to go. So I think that's cool. I think that's cool that the randomized element as well, because that was mentioned in the interview. The randomized element of having Nemesis pop up anywhere is still a looming danger. And speaking of that, you know, this moves on to the next segment of news, and they said that Nemesis will use an improved version of AI developed for the Tyrant of Resident Evil 2 Remake. You know, Mr. X stalked the shit out of everyone in Resident Evil 2 Remake. You know, people hated Mr. X. Now, there is some precautions going into the statement, because Mr. X, while he is a formidable foe that stalks you everywhere, it begs the question of, is downing Nemesis going to be worth it if he's based around the precursor Tyrant AI? Will it be worth it downing this guy? Will you get items? Will he get back up again immediately like Mr. X did? Like after 30 seconds or so, he gets back up and you don't get anything. I hope it's not like that, but I do hope the Tyrant AI, it was like really resilient back then. I hope it's really resilient, and I hope it's really good for Nemesis. And it should be like the Tyrant AI on steroids, by the way this is being mentioned. And they have to compensate for how he runs, how he uses other weapons, etc. So I think that's what they're really going for with that. It's a no-brainer there. Moving on, that's pretty good. It's good news. It's really good information so far. But next up we have the sound. They said before, another no-brainer answer for me, really. You're gonna get a lot of these. They said the sound is really important and is going to echo throughout the streets, you know, footsteps, zombies. This sound will be used to anticipate dangers. I think this is the type of game that you really need to play with headphones, because, you know, you can hear those footsteps, those groans, those sort of chewing noises in the alley more precisely. And I think that's just the quality way to go about horror games, man. You get in a dark room, cut off the damn lights, and you play this horror game and you experience it and you delve into it, and that's the only way to really play, in my opinion. That's how I'm gonna start out. A bunch of headsets or earbuds. I prefer like the headphones. I'm gonna have my headphones on while playing Resident Evil 3 Remake in front of an audience. Maybe I'll play it by myself in certain bursts, but you gotta have the headphones, man. Come on. So next, they talked about confirmation that we will visit the streets, shops, the Stagula petrol station, which is, I think that was in RE2 and 3, if I'm not mistaken. I vaguely remember the petrol station. I think no. I'm getting that mixed up. I'm sorry about that. So the petrol station was the place where you go to the garage. It's like a garage in the back, and the car like explodes. Some spark happens, and then it's a giant inferno, and then you leave, and then Jill sort of like leaves, and then the entire area explodes. So now I know what they're talking about. And then they talked about the Raccoon Press offices and the hospital. That's good. It seems like all the areas you're mostly familiar with in the original Resident Evil 3 is going to be in this game. I hope there's some new areas as well. Like with the remake, you're gonna want to have these new areas like interchanged and sort of making the areas a lot more dynamic. They had bathrooms finally in Resident Evil 2, so you're wondering like, where do the officers like take a shit or piss or something? Like, now they finally have that in the game, so I hope there's like new places, making the journey, the experience feel a lot more interconnected, a lot more interesting, a lot more dynamic, because of these new places where you have like zero prep time, you have no time to prepare. Also redesigned areas as well. I'm expecting the power plant to be completely redesigned. It is in the game from what we saw. Like, you can see like an overhead of the plant station, and I'm wondering like how that's going to be handled. I assume like there's going to be those areas that get remade. They might change it up that way. It might seem familiar at first, but at the end of the day, it is like different at the same time. All right, so this blurb is very weird, and I think I need to set this up with a little bit more context. But they said that there was a real life replica of Nemesis created so he could be scanned into Resident Evil 3 Remake via photogrammetry. What this means is, I think they just made like a model. They made a model with like leather, maybe they put like some weird sort of mold on him a little bit, because honestly, you can't make a real life Nemesis. He would be hounding us, he would be shooting rockets at us. We would be, well, if we're STARS members, he would be doing that. I think if we're normal civvies, we're best to just stay the hell out of his way. But I just can't stop laughing at that line, that premise, that notion is so funny. But I think we'll be okay in terms of like avoiding the genetic mutation of an experiment that Nemesis is roaming around in person. But I just think they made like a mold of Nemesis with like the leather and everything, and how he looks and how they envision him to look. It went from concept art to actual mold, and they made this giant statue of him, and then they took that and they put it into the game so they can have a model that have this basis on. Photogrammetry for the RE engine is expensive from what I heard. It really takes up a lot of resources, and you just can't simply scan everything you would like into the game. It needs some basis, it needs some foundation, it needs to currently exist in some way, whether it's like fabricated, created, or made to be in the game somehow. And I think, arts and crafts, you can do that. You can take Leon's old costume, old cosplay, and scan it in perfectly, just create it yourself. And I think that's what they did here. They made some statue or mold so Nemesis could be in. Next up is the no-brainer answer of the mutant worms being back into the game. Now, a lot of people are kind of really, I don't know if they're confused. I would say they're confused about this statement because they don't know if it entails to the mutant worms coming back specifically or the gravedigger. I think it's safe to say, and I accidentally hit my mic, so I apologize. I think it's safe to say that both are in the game, because it doesn't make sense to cut one over the other. Like, Well, actually, no. I would say, let me rephrase that. I would say it doesn't make sense to cut the Gravedigger that was a giant boss in the original Resident Evil 3 over the worms, which you could take or leave, really. They're enemies that you could just simply run past. It wouldn't make sense to just cut the Gravedigger automatically, so I assume the Gravedigger is in as well as the mutant worms, and this is some sort of confirmation to that. Now, next up, we have Carlos, and this was also a given, Carlos having a more expansive and playable segment. While that segment is also interesting, I assume the hospital segment will be layered this time around. It will be more to do in order to get that vaccine out of the hospital for Jill Valentine. That's the only way they can make that like segment really interesting, as well as maybe put like multiple segments in the game where Carlos is playable, because he's going to Star's office. That might be a little bit of setup, and he's also going to get the vaccine for Jill. I don't mind like Carlos having like 2 or 3 segments while this is mostly Jill's game, because you get that chance to have the character more featured as well. They talked about that in this interview, like Carlos is front and center on the cover. I would safely assume that he's gonna have more screen time because of that statement that they made in this magazine, and that's cool. That's cool, honestly. If Carlos is just as cool as Jill, like Carlos was in the past, you know, the hot talking Brazilian guy, then he's going to be interesting to play with, and it's going to be interesting to see how his mood sort of shifts, because he seems a little bit more serious now in the trailer. It's probably going to be interesting to see how that mood sort of gets really desperate with his desire to save Jill after that whole crisis at the clock tower. That's one of the things that I wanted from the original. I wanted more emotion, I wanted more drama, I wanted to know the inner workings and thoughts of Carlos during that whole situation. With this remake now, maybe they could convey those feelings a lot more easier, with the characters emoting to themselves, emoting to other people, emoting to the uncontrollable situation around them, since Raccoon City, I assume, changes just a little bit with the creature variety during October the 1st. Overall, with the way this list has been going, this has been keeping people largely optimistic with the way it's being read. Everything is good so far, everything is great, understandable, no-brainers, it makes sense. Now we get to the bad news, and the bad news, in my opinion, kind of varies, because some things I really kind of agree with, some things I kind of don't agree with, some things I have a strong opinion about. Let's get right into it. The first thing is that there will be supposedly no action choice selection or no live selection like it was in the original, which could give sequences of the game afterwards and give an advantage or a danger to the player. Now, again, you have to really think about the way this was quoted, because they really didn't like talk about the fact that, yeah, live selection is totally cut. It's not in the game anymore. No, they just said there's not going to be multiple endings, which means that the scene of Nikolai dying to Nemesis may not be in this game. It may be completely 100% cut. And I'm going to explain why I think that actually makes sense. We've known in the canon for a long time that Nikolai Ganef survives, or Zenef, or however you pronounce it. We know for a long time that Nikolai survived the entire incident of Resident Evil 3 in the timeline. That was canon. That is a known fact. It has been talked about, alluded to, referenced several times that Nikolai was the one that escaped in the chopper and Barry was the one that picked up Jill Valentine. And the Barry ending is honestly like the most cool ending. It's the cool one. It's the one where we see a reoccurring character from Resident Evil 1 come back and pick up Jill and save her life. That is a great ending over Carlos just flying away and that's it. Nikolai dying was cool, I'm not gonna lie. It gave that whole element of Nemesis is actually like really a threat, and he will make sure that no one else gets to Jill outside of him. I get that, I totally understand that, but it's unneeded. It's unneeded now. that'll be like correlating the same thing if they like redid Resident Evil 1 again. If they decided to remake a remake and they did Resident Evil 1 and there was the possibility of saving Barry and Rebecca, so they would be in the other characters' campaigns at the end and making that sensible, it would be equivalent to that. Why do we need non-canon endings in Resident Evil anymore if we already know the canon routes? I don't understand that. I don't get it. I don't get why we would need the Nikolai ending of him dying. The only thing you could possibly say is that it removes some replay value from the game, and I agree, it does remove that replay value to go back and experience that alternate scene and see what would happen during that time. However, outside of that, it's non-canon, so it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter at the end of the day. It's a non-canon ending that has no reflection on the timeline going forward, and therefore it is irrelevant story-wise. Nikolai does not die. He lives throughout the events of Resident Evil 3. Moving on, I think the potential removal at least of live selection could be a big game changer. It is disappointing that it is cut, because it's like, what if I wanted to experience these alternate pathways? What if I wanted to experience these alternate routes and levels, and the meaning of either encountering Nemesis or either getting item drops from a free KO? It really did make you think strategically over just having a different ending. So I think the cut of live selection is a bit of a downer if it's true. I think it should have been integrated differently, like quickly make a choice or die, and quickly make this choice really meaningful because it impacts like whatever portion of the game you're playing, for better or for worse. That's what made live selection awesome, so I don't see why it's gone from the game or why it couldn't have been improved in some fashion. And I'm sorry if you hear like background noise in the background. I think some people are sick. I apologize, but I'm doing this late, fam, so you gotta take the good with the bad. They also mentioned in this article, and I'm gonna do like 2 final topics here, but I want to get this over with. They also mentioned in this article that the Mercenaries minigame Operation Mad Jackal would be cut in favor of Resident Evil Resistance, which is aka Project Resistance, the asymmetrical multiplayer game that a lot of people seem to hate, that they never really played. There was always that weird sort of contention from people in the RE community about Project Resistance who really never played the beta or the demo, compared to the people that did and said it was pretty decent. It has potential, it just needs some fixes here or there. Honestly, how I feel about this, if it's true, I'm just saying if it's true and all that, I really don't have this weird lasting impact of saying that Operation Mad Jackal was meaningful, was great, was excellent. I think, honestly, in my opinion, if you want me to be real with you, I think it was a throwaway mode that they put in there, just like EX Battle was for the re-releases of Resident Evil 2 on the DualShock version. It really didn't have this hold on me that I actually really need this content in the game, because it was just a mini game. And this mini game, honestly, I'm not going to lie, I think the later renditions of Mercenaries were a lot more impactful with the way they added on to the time bonus based combat and the way they added on to having multiplayer and no mercy mercenaries. I think that laid the groundwork for a different foundation that a lot more people will remember in the Resident Evil sort of minigame mythos and sort of remember over just Operation Mad Jackal. Now, I'm not saying Operation Mad Jackal is bad. I'm not saying that it's completely terrible. I'm just saying that when people sort of give me this statement of saying it's the best thing since sliced bread, honestly, I have to question that logic, because when I played it recently, and I played it like this year, I just thought it was a cool throwaway minigame where you could save like hostages, you could get like extra ammo, you could do all these cool things, you could fight like 2 Nemesis monsters together in a tight corridor. Yet its fun factor didn't keep me engaged for long. I just played with the 3 characters, which was Mikhail, it was Nikolai, and then it was Carlos. Carlos had his classic assault rifle. Mikhail had an entire arsenal with like a rocket launcher. He also had a Magnum as well. He also had a slew of other weapons. I think he had the shotgun. And then Nikolai was the most advanced one. He had the handgun and the knife only. Mikhail is easy mode because he has like all the shit. Carlos is like intermediate, but you really have to learn to dodge and evade and pick up those hostages, and you definitely have to do them for Nikolai as well. Pick up those hostages because he only has handgun and a knife, and that's it. Really, outside of playing with like Carlos and Mikhail, because I did not enjoy my experience with Nikolai, he's for like experts. I thought it was pretty basic for what it was. It was just like flash in the pan that you would play for like an hour, and that's it. I think if there was a story, I think if there was some sort of other premise behind it, I think if they added more to Operation Mad Jackal, and it does suck that they don't have the potential to do that, assuming this is cut, because like I said, this was not a developer quote, it was from the personal opinion of the person who wrote the article, so I have to sort of take that at face value. If it is cut, yeah, they could have put in like Murphy, they could have put in Tyrell, but I think it would have just been like the same sort of flash in the pan experience if this was equivalent to the original. And you know, for all intents and purposes, Fourth Survivor was like the original, and that hasn't changed at all. I think the only way they could impress me is if there was like co-op or something. If there was like single player mercenaries that you could go around and save people, and if there was co-op where you had a buddy, that's the only way they could do something that is out of the norm of the original to make me keep playing Operation Mad Jackal. But as it stands now, I really have no reason to replay it other than having some entertainment factor on my channel, and that's it. It is what it is. It's cool you could unlock weapons for the campaign or infinite ammo earlier if you decide to play Operation Mad Jackal, but other than that, it's just flash in the pan for a game mode. The last thing I wanted to mention is the whole, I didn't get to talk about it last time, but I guess I'll put it in here. The last thing I wanted to mention is the whole Julia Voth controversy. People being upset that Julia Voth did not come back or wasn't recontacted by Capcom to do Jill Valentine's face for Resident Evil 3 Remake. And Julia Voth was the facial model for Jill Valentine in RE5. I think she first debuted in the Resident Evil 1 remake. There is some circumstances supposedly behind this. I don't know too much about what's going on behind the scenes. Supposedly Voth is a union representative, so that means that Capcom has been like really non-union for the past few years now. That's why they hired completely new people to do the voice work of like Leon and Claire over getting people from Canada, because they also have this LA studio as well that they've been pushing time and time again. They need LA locals, and they don't want to deal with union representatives because they don't want to pay them or some stuff going on. I think this happened during the voice actor strike. I know there's a few key characters that they didn't get back, and we were wondering like what's going on with that. Like the original actor for Chris, well, not so original, I think Roger Craig came in late, but he was Chris's actor during RE5. He is not Chris's actor anymore. They got a completely different person. I think his name is David Vaughn. So this might be a prime example of Capcom not wanting to do anything with people that are unionized. And honestly, Julia Voth hasn't been present as a facial actress in the Resident Evil series for Jill Valentine for almost like 11 years now. I think that last stint was the Desperate Escape DLC, and that was it. Afterwards, ORC and Revelations 1, they replaced Jill's face time and time again, and she's had like numerous facelifts over the series. So I don't know what is this weird argument when people say they want consistency when she has not been consistent since ORC and Revelations 1. If you want to get really technical, hell, you could say Jill hasn't been facially consistent since the original RE1 going forward from there, considering the fact that they changed their face, you know, in several different iterations going forward from that game, and they didn't bring back the original actress to do the facial models for the time, or they didn't base her appearance specifically on like Zay going forward from Resident Evil 5 and all that shit. So honestly, it's a non-issue to me. I think cosmetics are very low on the totem pole and they do not affect gameplay at all, in my opinion. I think that easy problems have easy solutions. If you don't like the fact that Julia Voth isn't really prominent in this game or featured, or they didn't go back and choose her, then why not get the PC version where you can have a free reign of access to mods time and time again, instead of making like a big issue or a big stink about it. This is something seriously I don't get. I don't get why Resident Evil gamers who constantly harp on facials or cosmetics or costumes, I don't understand why they just won't wait until the PC versions or get the PC versions, because the RE community, they have a solid foundation of modding, and they will mod these old costumes, or they will do alterations, or they will do specific things like facial reconstruction, or they will do this stuff constantly on PC as mods, and I've seen them before. So if you have a problem with this, why not just get the PC version? If easy problems have easy solutions, then this seems like a quick fix at the end of the day. Same for the controversy that happened with Tifa wearing leggings and having a sports bra in Final Fantasy VII Remake. How about just waiting out that timed exclusivity? That goes away, you know, and then when Final Fantasy VII Remake comes to the PC, and we know this will probably happen because Square likes money, if it comes to multiple platforms and if they have a thriving modding community, then what is the problem with waiting and then getting the superior version that people like to say PC is the superior version of the game, so they don't mind waiting? So what's waiting like maybe a year or waiting for a couple of months until mods come out? This is the same thing that happened with Claire's sleeves. It's like they fixed that problem immediately, so why not just get it on PC? If you're really fussed about cosmetics, I'm sure the fans will fix it for us. You know, they did the same thing with DMC5. That game had a lack of costumes. It's more costumes due to mods. The fan community, they have you covered. So again, it's like you could say, well, Capcom isn't doing it, you know, fair enough for the costumes, but for the faces, that's already set in stone. It doesn't bug me too much. Jill looks fine, and if you really do have a problem with it, then why not get the game on a personal computer? I put it like this: if you're that type of person that is a very, very adamant individual against censorship, you should already be on PC. If you're adamant against censorship and you also pay $60 for a new release every month, you should already be on PC. You should have had a rig saved up. There is no excuses. There's no excuses for this. You should already be on that platform to eliminate that issue. Again, easy problems have easy solutions. This stuff does not bug me too much. And again, you get to play RE3 in 60 FPS. It's like, you know, if you can't help yourself, then what is the point? It's going to be an endless rant that I will not participate in because I want to see how the gameplay pans out over cosmetics. That's how I feel, over like skin, faces. I'm not really that type of person that was always into how a model looked, unless it looked like really bad or really off. That's the thing I'm looking for, like bugs, glitches, etc. If it's just a face, it doesn't bother me too much. It sucks that some of these people never got phone calls back, because we know Resident Evil is a giant widespread series and they did offer their contributions to some extent, but business is business, and if Capcom wants to go non-union, then it's their money, it's their right. They're more than welcome to do so if they find talent in these new actors, because I never heard of Nick Apostolides, or I never heard of Stephanie Panicella, Halo until now. Maybe it gives new opportunities for these new actors to get their big break, to get their faces out there and introduce new people to the Resident Evil series while respecting what came before it as well. You know, you gotta have the new and the old, you gotta mix it up, you gotta have the prodigies in play, and then maybe we'll also have this giant interconnecting community where these new actors, these new actresses, these new facial models can feel welcome as well in the realm of Resident Evil. I'm just thinking outside of the box here, you know, it could always be something positive that comes out of situations like that. Anyway, this is Renegade Operative signing out. It would be a pleasure if you guys were really so kind to hit that like button if you enjoyed this discussion. Once again, multiple likes, it really helps me out in the algorithm, so I always got to do a call to action. I know some people are like, I don't want to really, you know, press this free button, but it's just like free. You don't have to pay for it. It's free entertainment, it's free discussions. So once again, if you are so kind, please hit that like button, please sub if you are new, please engage in the comments. I know I'm super slow on commenting, I know I get a lot of comments each day, but I do try to keep the discussion going whenever I see it. Whenever I'm not doing videos, I do try to participate as well, and I will respond to you people momentarily. Once again, give me some time and I will get in that comment section, boy. I do love comments, I do love talking about discussions like this. So tell me, what did you guys think of the video? What do you think of these potential cuts from Resident Evil 3 Remake? Are you fine with it? Are you okay with it? Are you not okay with it? How do you feel about the Julia Voth controversy where they didn't use her face in like almost 11 years? Sound off, let me know in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time. Once again, I enjoy having you here. I enjoy this community that I am building up, and once again, I'm gonna keep trying to push out interesting content for you guys to watch in the future and years to come, until it finally gets to the point where I'm like, YouTube is just done because it's so stupid at this rate. You know, everyone has a good road, a beginning and an end. So I do really enjoy you guys coming and watching my videos currently. We'll see you guys next time. I'm just rambling now. Later. Peace. Take care.